Hey, this is a video response for P226Nut. I listened to your whole video, all 30 plus minutes of it. There's a lot to unpack in there, obviously, and I don't think I'd be able to address everything unless I took notes, which unfortunately I didn't. But there's definitely some things I want to address in there. One of the things that you said toward the end was you don't think that we would accept you. Well, I can tell you that I accept you for exactly who you are and where you are. Exactly where you are. I know it's hard to find a church that would say that. I know it is. And that's what sucks. But anyway, imagine if God was somebody who refused to meet us where we were. Imagine that for a second. Would anybody be able to find him? No. I believe that God is in all the low places and all the high places. That numerology thing that you drew, I think you would call it that. And you had God up in the corner. Here's my version of it. If God truly is omnipresent, then God is all over the place on that page. He's everywhere. Now, his holiness and his perfection is not necessarily seen down in hell and in the ones and twos and threes and all this stuff that you had. But that just means that the people that dwell in that place can't see him. But if God wasn't everywhere, then people wouldn't find him in prison. Because prison's about as shitty of a place as you can possibly get. People getting shivved and raped and killed and beat and some horrific stuff happening in prison. If God was literally like, I'm not even going to dwell in this place, nobody can even find me here, then nobody would. But in fact, I made a whole video on people that find Jesus in prison. It's like, I had a friend who was like, why do people always find Jesus in prison? And I kind of tried to dispute that, because I don't think everybody does find him in prison. And I said in the video, I said, if everybody found Jesus in prison, then I'd love to go to prison, because everybody would be super nice there. It would be like such a pleasant place. Everybody would be like, oh, hey, we're glad you're here. Here, sit down. But no, prison ain't like that. Prison is full of freaking animals, man. And by animals, I mean people that would just, devour you. So most people do not find Jesus in prison. In fact, most people don't find Jesus at all, fortunately. But anyway, you talked about reincarnation. The arguments against reincarnation that I've heard from Christians are that it's not explicitly mentioned in the Bible, and so therefore they don't believe it. And also there's a verse that says, it is appointed man once to die and then the judgment, which would indicate that you get one life. So am I going to pretend like I know the answer to that question? No, because I have absolutely had thoughts about maybe reincarnation is a thing. I don't claim it to be truth, though. I think the most important thing to do, I don't know your name, but I'll just call you P226. I think the most important thing for you and for me and for everybody, and it's not just like me trying to tell you what to do. I think the most important thing to do is every single theory that you have, every single thought that comes in your mind that helps you organize your view of the universe, your view of God, your view of yourself, your view of other people. Just the only thing I would ask you to do is be open to changing your opinion. Be open to changing your opinion. Not saying you're wrong. You could be right. You could be 100% right where you are right now. You could be, that thing that you drew in your notebook could be exactly how the world is. But don't invest in it so greatly that if something else comes along in your life that strongly, strongly, strongly indicates that it's not like that, and that it might be a little bit different from that, be open to it. That's all I'd say. And I'd say that you had to be have a certain level of open-mindedness to even come up with that, And I've thought about things like that too, as far as like 6 is the number of man, 666 is the number of man, and everything is a trinity, right? So God's a trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, 777, and then 666 is man's number, and there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret that, I once had a thought about the 5 senses, What are the 5 senses? Hearing, smell, sight, taste, and touch, right? Hearing, smell, sight, taste, and touch, yeah. So you could almost argue, here's a theory that you might be interested in that I came up with. Animals are on a level 5, because they only have the 5 senses. That's all they have. Man, according to the Bible, is the number 6. It's the number of man, 666, which tells you that man has an additional sense. He's got those 5 senses, right? Sight, taste, smelling, hearing, touch, but he has this other thing. Well, what's the other? What separates man from animals? I would say our moral compass, right? So you have, for example, if you're out camping in the woods and a bear comes by, and you're sleeping, right? And the bear comes up on you unexpectedly. Why is the bear there? Is he there to murder you because he hates you? Probably not. I mean, there's a chance you might have pissed him off earlier in the day. You got in between him and her and her cubs or whatever. But chances are the bear is just there because he smells food or she smells food, right? And they're just like, oh, I smell bread. I smell fruit. I smell chocolate. I smell meat, whatever. Comes in there looking for food. You wake up. Bear sees you. What does he do? He's like, oh, there's another piece of food. He eats you, or he tears you to pieces, right? Takes all the food, eats it all, walks away. Let me ask you a question. After that whole thing happens, does the bear feel bad after that? Does the bear walk away and go, man, I shouldn't have done that. He seemed like a nice guy. He probably had a wife and kids. I shouldn't have killed that dude. No. The bear has no conscience at all. He has no sense of right or wrong. He only has instincts, right? He's got his 5 senses, and that's all he's got. Bear doesn't feel shame. Now, dogs feel shame sometimes, but dogs, I think, feel shame because you, the owner, make them feel bad for taking a shit in the middle of the living room. Don't ever do that again. You shove their nose in it. You go outside, right? They're just looking at you like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did to piss you off, and so you associate the fear with the taking a shit or taking a piss in the house, and then they learn that. It's a learned thing. They don't have a sense of right and wrong. So I think that the 5, the 6, and the 7 could be. The extra 6th sense is like man's sense of right and wrong, which I think the book of Genesis kind of addresses that, Says, you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now you know good from bad. Okay, so that's what separates us from the animals. The animals can't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because they don't have the capacity to do it. And that's symbolic. It's not a real tree. I mean, it's symbolic in my view. So we have this thing. We're in between God and the animals. We're at a 6. God's at a 7. The animals are at a 5. We're at a 6. In that sense, right? Following me. If you want to believe in evolution, that's fine. We evolved. We used to be 5s, and then we grew a cerebral cortex, and we turned into a 6. But now, we're worse than the animals in many ways, because animals don't run around killing each other for no good reason. Animals don't kill each other for a political cause, or animals tend to live in harmony with their environment. Man just spreads like a virus and takes everything over and pollutes, and man is more like a locust. He goes to an area, eats up all the resources, and then goes to another area and eats up all the resources. Man is much more like a virus than most animals are. But, Jesus came down and basically was like, okay, You guys are almost there. You're at a 6. I'm at a 7. Not me, Shafe. Jesus is saying that. Like, I'm at a 7. You want to be, when you die, do you want to be with God? You want to be in a place where you can actually be around God? Then follow me and do what I do. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. 7. I don't know about 8, 9, or 10. I don't know about any of that. That's not scriptural. Even 5 isn't scriptural. I'm kind of making that up on my own. But again, we all have these like little theories that we come up with and stuff like that. But and because the world is such an uncertain place, I reserve the right to change my opinion whenever I want to. You got to be open to things that God or the universe or whatever you want to call him or it is going to teach you. If God's trying to teach you something and you're closed-minded, you're not open to it, you're not willing to question your own beliefs, then you're not going to receive that. You're not going to receive that. But I guess the last thing I want to bring up, again, I completely 100% accept you. I don't call you a heretic. Anybody who's searching is somebody that I want to talk to. But last thing I want to say is, I did hear you say, and you got pretty emotional during the video where you said that you're trying to be, quote, less gay, or you're trying to be a better person. Like, as crazy as this sounds, I want to discourage you from doing that. I want to discourage you from trying to be less gay. I do. Now, I'm not telling you to just go out and do all that shit, but it's kind of hard to explain. The more you read the words of Jesus, the more you listen to him, the more you pray, the more you read the Bible, the more you understand it, the more you realize God doesn't want you to do that kind of stuff. He doesn't want you to try to do things. He doesn't want you to try on your own merit to live a holy life. He wants you to ask him for help. And that was the biggest thing that, like, forever I just didn't understand what the hell that meant, and it tripped me up so bad. Like, what do you mean? Like, how is Jesus going to do it for me? And like, the bottom line is, picture yourself in a situation. Well, let me back up. Think of something in your mind right now that completely abhors you, that you would never, ever, ever do in a million years. Now, you had said something about the difference between being gay and being a child molester. Okay, so let's start there. Would it be tempting for you if I dropped a 3-year-old off to your house? Would it be tempting to you to molest that child? I hope the answer is no. If I said, hey, man, my son's 3, I got to run, do these things. I'm going to be gone for a couple hours. Can I drop him off at your house? And you have a heart for children, and you never in a million years would do anything like that. You might set up Candyland or something like that and play with them, or you might plop them down in front of the TV and turn on Sesame Street or something like that for them, make them a sandwich, or whatever you do for them. But you would never, ever, ever do that. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you hurt that kid? Because you have a heart for that kid. Because that's something that you would never, you just wouldn't go there, because it's not even temptation for you. You're so abhorred by that. You're so repelled by anybody who would even think about doing something like that. So you don't need help. You don't need to you don't need to try to not molest that kid. God's already got that part of your mind taken care of, that you never would do anything like that to that kid. And it's like, the more you give God ground in your life and in your mind, the more he takes it over. And one day you wake up 10 years into your Christian walk and you say, oh my God, like, I would never do the things I did 10 years ago. Why? Because you tried so hard? No, because you let God come in that far into your life. And now it's almost like a war. It's like a battleground, where like you're here, God's here, and here's like no man's land, right? It's like you're fighting over this territory, and then you just kind of like let God come in, you know. And now you don't even feel like going out here because God has renewed this part of your mind, or you wouldn't even think about doing that kind of stuff. But then what does God say when he comes up against you? What does he say? He actually says, back up, because I got to get more ground in your life now. I gotta get more ground. And that's where the growth is. That's where you're just like, no, I don't want to give up that ground in my life, God. I don't want to, I don't want to give that up to you. When you start feeling those feelings of like, I don't want to do it, but God's really, really telling me not to do it, then it's like, okay, I'm just going to try to abstain from this one thing. I'm going to not smoke crack tomorrow because I like to smoke crack every Wednesday night. But I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to test it. I'm going to see. It's going to be hard. Whatever that thing is that you're tempted to do that you don't want to do, you just try it and you say, God, just help me not to do this thing, or help me to do this other thing. And it's very important that when you don't do something that you normally do, you have to replace it with something else. That's what they teach alcoholics when they go through like the 12-step program, is like, you don't just take alcohol out of your life. You replace it with a hobby. You replace it with fishing. You replace it with playing guitar. You replace it with whatever, going out on a date with your girlfriend or whoever. You replace it with volunteering your time somewhere. You replace it with something. It's very, very important. That's actually giving God the ground. That's the act of actually giving God that ground. You replace it with another thing. And for some people, it's replacing crack with a cigarette. Anyway, why am I sitting here holding my guitar? I guess just because I want to play a little bit, but it's the blues. It's the Christian blues. But yeah, do we reincarnate? I don't know. To me, the thought of reincarnation is a very interesting one. And I think it'd be cool if we did, because, you have people who die and they don't really know Jesus, and Jesus says, okay, this is your hell. You get to go back to earth and live another life. As opposed to you only get one chance. And that's it. Now you get to burn in a lake of fire for eternity. No, just go back. Go back and try again. That way, you could look at it and say, well, everybody's going to end up in heaven. It's just a matter of how many lives you got to live to get there. And that would make God a merciful, beautiful God who knows that nobody's going to end up in hell for eternity. It's just a matter of living, 27,000 lives before you get to heaven, as opposed to living one life or 6 lives or 1,300 lives or however many lives you got to live. I don't know any of that stuff. I honestly don't know. And the funny thing about it is that I don't think Jesus addresses, he doesn't address reincarnation, and he doesn't address homosexuality either. The law, Deuteronomy, I think, or Leviticus addresses it, and Paul's epistles address it. But again, going back to what I said in another video, I think homosexuality is the low-hanging fruit. It's easy. It's easy for people to say, well, I'm a sinner, but I'm not that bad. Well, Jesus definitely spoke against people like that.